Welcome along to our final insight into the London property market for 2023. And as always, I'm joined by our expert on this topic. It's Marc von Grundherr, director at one of London's leading estate agents, Benham and Reeves. And Mark, well, we cast our eye back to 2023 and it's been very turbulent. We know that. And I was just wondering, who were the winners and losers in the London property market in 2023? Was it buyers, sellers, landlords, or tenants?
Okay, so the clear and outright winner by a mile are landlords. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about interest rate rises, which has obviously really hurt landlords, and interest rates going up from 2% to now 4, 5, 6% we heard, which has dropped off now. That was a real pain for landlords, and I'm a landlord myself, and it was very painful. Fortunately, not all my properties came up this year, and a lot of our clients' mortgages came up last year. We have 3,500 landlords. We surveyed them, and only 15% had loans come up in 2023, which actually, so the impact was less. Why do I say they're winners? Not because they paid more interest, but because they've had big jumps in the rent. And so therefore, with rental increases of anywhere starting with 10 to 11%, up to 20 to 25% increases that we've seen, and that's genuine increases we've seen. Average is about 14%. Now, that's been very, very, very good news, even with the interest rate rise. So actually, I think landlords have been the out and out winners. Sadly, tenants, on the other hand, have increased cost of living, increased gas bills, increased electricity bills, council tax not so, which they have to pay anyway. Plus, they've had these big increases in rents. But what we are seeing is that's not shying any tenants away from renting. We've still got more tenants than we've ever had. And a good stat that I use is Rightmove did a very interesting stat they put out. They said today, during 2023, the average number of inquiries per available property was 25. You take that back to 2019, before we even knew what COVID was, cost of living, any of these strifes, no wars, no nothing, and there were only 8. So what that means is they got 3 times the number of leads. Actually, as a business, we're seeing 37 is our average number of inquiries per available property, and which is pretty mad. So winners, landlords, losers, tenants. If I'm on the reverse of that, looking at sales, I think the winners have been buyers, because the market has been incredibly challenging this year for resales as well as off-plan sales. So buyers have been able to really get in there, make an offer, and if it's not agreed, just not go ahead. And on the reverse, unfortunately, sellers have been in the opposite and have taken a bit of a beating, because if they needed to sell and you need to sell, then you've got no options and you have to take what's out there. And there have been deals. I mean, myself, I've bought a couple of amazing deals this year, because, you know, everybody's going about interest rate rises and property market's over, but there's so many tenants. You can get a good deal, even though you're paying high interest rate. You can get a good rent to cover it. So actually, I think now's a good time to buy. And as I said, I've bought 2 really good deals this year.
Well, it's so great that you're a landlord as well as an estate agent, Mark, because you can see the whole picture and you can see it from everybody's point of view. What do you put down to this massive supply-demand imbalance of rental stock in London? Are landlords selling up? Are there more tenants than ever wanting to rent in London? Is it a combination of the two?
So number one, landlords selling up. That's what all the press has been reporting, and I've seen it. This year, we've lost under 1% of our stock. Under 1%. I think we've had 32 landlords sell. On the reverse of that, we've added on about 9% more stock, because that's through properties that have sold in our overseas offices and completed this year, and or landlords just moving to us, or accidental landlords who couldn't sell because they don't want to sell. and they're becoming landlords. So actually, this myth of this huge landlord exodus is not happening. So that it is not a reduction in supply area. What you are seeing is a few factors. Number one, work from home reversal. So we saw lots of people during COVID moving out of London because they thought they were going to work from home forever. And we have had lots of cases where people have bought a place in the country. They need to be at their desk 5 days a week. Goldman Sachs, for one example, 5 days in the office or no days. And that's their policy. And so there's an example. If you moved out and you don't want to commute in an hour and a half each way every day, 3-hour commute, plus the cost of travel, those people have been coming in renting. I predict that those people will then end up selling outside London and will rebuy in London. If that's what they did, we'll see a reversal of that. So number one, work from home reversal. Number two, international students off the hook more this year than ever before. There's over 450,000 students in the UK, and we've seen a huge jump in the inquiries we're receiving from students. We started really early this year in about May time for a September start. Doesn't help them because we can't book a flat in May for a September start. And we had a number of cases where people rented staff in September, and we had just move in last week, 5th of December, the week before last week. And he'd waited 2 months because he wanted something near to where King's College was, and he waited for the right property. So number one, work from home reversal. Number two, increase in international students. Number three, increase in general professionals and people renting. Look at the migrant numbers, 600,000 migrants into the UK. What's the one thing they all need other than a job? They all want a home, and they have to, and loads of those have been dumping. And number four, the other reason is on the supply side. We are seeing over 75% of our tenants last year renewed this year in 2023. So our numbers are about 10% higher than they normally would be. That's because people, even with 10, 15, 20% rent increases, they'd rather stay put and not move. And landlords like myself, I don't screw out every single penny. I do look to get a decent increase because I have costs, as I said, like my interest, and it's a profit. It's meant to make a money, but I don't need to chase the last penny in order to retain a good tenant. So I always do that. I think you do the same, Vanessa, don't you?
Well, absolutely. And I think, the market sets the rent anyway. So it's a bit of a myth that landlords can set their property at
100%.
rent. If you over egg it, you may get 1 or 2 inquiries, but if you set it about right, and the market rent, then you'll get a good tranche of inquiries, and then you've got a really good pool of tenants to choose from. Just wondering, Mark, have you facilitated any landlord to landlord sales? Because we are hearing a fair bit about tenanted properties and tenanted portfolios actually changing hands within the landlord sector.
Yeah, we're seeing that. We haven't seen any portfolio sales. Oh, we had one client buy a portfolio, not through us, that we actually manage now. Small building with 5 flats in it. Okay. We've seen a couple of landlords sell to existing landlords, but not many. We have a lot of landlords coming to us saying, I'm looking and I'll buy something tenanted. But a lot of people are worried about who the tenant is, why the landlord's selling. And we still find that a lot of landlords would really rather buy it totally clean, untenanted, because honestly, if you buy anything, unless there's something dreadfully wrong with it, you can rent it. We have seen a couple, but not big numbers. All the stuff people are talking about, we're just not seeing those kind of big numbers.
Oh, it's very interesting to hear your actual data from the business space, if you like. Now, you've recently returned from a trip to the Far East and Asia, and I was curious to know what appetite for London investment international investors have had in 2023. Are they still interested? Are they being cautious?
Yep, I did Turkey the first weekend in November, and that's the hottest market the biggest buyers of UK property, and primarily London property, is coming out of Turkey. That's because of the political uncertainty and what's happening to their currency. We were there for a weekend, the first weekend in November. And as I said, I've never seen demand like it. And I've never been to an event where you have 80 people coming. They book in appointments and every single one of them comes. And none of them are coming for a cup of tea and a chat. They're all coming to actually talk about a property and either buy something or book a visit. So it was incredibly busy. The following week, I then flew to Singapore. I was there for 5 days. Then I went to Bangkok. I was there for 4 days. And then I went to Malaysia and I was in Kuala Lumpur again for 5 days. And the sentiment in Asia is not the same as Turkey. People are coming. They want to hear what's going on in the market. And we do these educational talks, but they are not in the years gone by when you would sell 10, 20 units at a show. It's not like that now. The Asian markets, they love the UK, they love London for investment, but unless there is a factor that is driving them to make that sale, such as their child is going to go to university or school and they want to buy something to use or for them to use, they are much more sitting on their hands, and people are like, I'm waiting for a deal. So those deals that we did, we had a successful trip, to be fair. In those 14 days, we did quite a number of sales, and they were mainly from investors. There was a couple that did them for their own use. What they want to know is, why should I buy now? What is it that's in the market buying now? I've got higher interest rates. About half of our buyers paid cash, so they're not affected by interest rates. Why should I buy now? Well, the currency is a good reason, because the pound's been quite weak. The rental income, the rental yields are up like mad, and they can negotiate a deal. So with that, that's helping to get people across the line. But it is not super, super, super mad market. So those clients and sellers that contact me and say, can you sell this in Hong Kong because the Chinese are buying like mad? They are buying, but they are not buying like mad the way that they were. So in this market, if you need to sell or want to sell, you have to price it right and make sure it looks as good as you can possibly get it. It needs to be, good knit, good decor, and everything that you'd want. And it's worth spending some money on that, because if not, either you won't sell it unless you price it so cheap that it can't not sell, and it'll just sit there. So, the sentiment in Asia is very strong, is still strong, but the transactions that we are seeing and that we did are down considerably, because they don't see the huge drive to force them to do it now. Notwithstanding, our taxes in the UK have turned it around for them and made it much less attractive than it was before, and that's a big problem.
Well, it's very interesting to hear about sentiment of foreign investors. And what about sentiment of big corporations? Because there's actually been throughout 2023, we've had quite a few very large corporations move to London, and that's got to be positive.
Yep. So I thought you meant on build to rent and large corps buying to rent out. There have been those, and large companies coming in. There's been a lot of that, but that hasn't been in London. So that's the build to rent, which maybe you weren't asking about.
No, I was talking more about.
In terms of tenants moving in, 100%. You've got Google, you've got Meta, Facebook, got Goldman Sachs, you've got Citibank, you've got all these large companies that still have lots of people moving here. Again, that massive exodus that everybody talked about when Brexit came in, with all of the banks, everybody moving to Frankfurt and Paris. Yes, 100%. Paris and Frankfurt picked up a large number of people. Has that meant there's been a desertion of London? Absolutely not. I have never been in a market like it where we've been as busy as we were this year. The market started to cool now as we went into November and December, but that's the market. Usually people move in that window from March through till end of October. But it's cooled off. But there are transactions happening. We've got 3 tenants we let yesterday, moving in this Friday before Christmas. 3 we did yesterday. that are moving in this Friday. You know, you are still seeing people needing to move and wanting to take advantage of move. So big corporations are there. You know, we do an awful lot. Interestingly enough, we set up a Japanese desk which looks after Japanese companies, employees moving into London. We set it up 7 years ago, 7.5 years ago. And today we have a team of 7 and they look after 8% of the London Japanese market. We as a business look after 8% of Japanese employees moving to London. That's quite a big stretch for a British company. Our whole team are Japanese, and we're always looking for good quality properties for Japanese tenants. But I use that because that's showing the corporate demand is there. And we've seen an increase in the number of leads we've had from Japanese companies. That's partly through our growth and our expansion, but it's also partly showing that it's demonstrating that they are still here and coming to stay in London, even though it's expensive for them to move employees here from Tokyo or the rest of Japan. They're still coming. So that's good news.
Well, it's very interesting to hear about your Japanese desk. That sounds like you've really developed an incredible niche there to serve the Japanese market. And that's great news for landlords who want good quality tenants backed by a big corporation.
100%.
I've got a bit of a viewer's question for you, Marc. We had a Property Tribes member asking if the tribe felt that studio flats were a good bet in London because obviously they cost less and they still achieve a good rent, and the yields are theoretically higher for a studio flat. I wondered what your view was on studio flats as an investment in the capital.
It's one of my favorite questions. What type of property do I buy to get the best return? It's a great question. I get asked it all the time. So studios are a brilliant investment because they're small, they're less capital intensive. And by that, I mean the amount you pay is going to be less. You can still get a decent 60, 70, 75% loan to value. Your rental will be very high because there's huge demand from single people and couples who rent studio flats.
And it's entry level into the market, isn't it?
And it's entry level in, when I'm saying capital values, like entry level into the market. The only thing to bear in mind is on a studio, developers and everybody knows that the smaller they are, you pay more for smaller things in smaller packages. So your price per square foot, you get less money for bang for your buck. You get less for your money. You get studio is the most expensive. One bed is a tiny bit cheaper, but not much. And the difference in rental between a studio and a one bedroom in the rental there will be a difference, but it won't be proportionate. So your yield on a studio will probably be that bit higher than a one bedroom. 2 bedroom, you'll get a much better price per square foot. You must buy 2 bedroom, 2 bathrooms because you want to appeal to sharers as well as single people, but your price per square foot will be lower. And your rental will be proportionate to the price you are paying. So what I'm saying is the yield on a 1 bedroom will probably be very similar to the yield on a 2 bedroom. However, you're getting a lot more space. And so in terms of the actual yield, and you just look at the yield and nothing else, and I'll come on to what the other factors are, you get a slightly higher yield to a studio than you do for a 1 bedroom. And you'll get about the same between a 1 and a 2 bedroom. 3 bedrooms start to drop off because there are less people looking for 3 bedrooms, unless you're buying something secondhand and it's in a mansion block and you're trying to rent to six sharers. But that's an HMO market. And so honestly, I would stick to studios and 1 beds and 2 beds. Now, in terms of the other factor I mentioned, the thing that is very interesting is we say the rental yield is higher the smaller the property is, but the term of the tenant, the length of time they stay in the property, the bigger the property is, the longer they stay. So someone renting a house, if they're a family, it's expensive. It's a huge issue to change home, especially if you have to move schools as well. And the costs involved with moving are expensive. If you're in a studio, single guy, he puts all his stuff in a couple of cases, walks out the door and he's gone. If you're in a house and it's unfurnished, lots more furniture. So you tend to find the term of tenancy is higher in a larger property. And a 2-bedroom, if you've got a couple with a child or 2 people, a couple on their own, or maybe a single person renting it with a study, they will tend to stay longer. And so therefore your total return on studio 1 and 2 beds will actually be pretty similar, because you might get a bit higher rent on a studio, but they might leave after 9 months. Whereas, and then you may have a little bit of a void.
It's such a good point, Mark, because really what you're saying is that anybody stacking the numbers on any type of apartment in London, or indeed any property, do consider your potential voids as you turn over tenants. And I totally agree with you that for studios, it's likely to be higher. That's definitely something to take into account. And I've done a little bit of research recently on studio flats and very small square footage flats. And in truth, there's only about 7 lenders that will actually lend on them.
It depends how small they are. If they're tiny, that's yes.
Yeah, about that. So I think it's very important to do bear that in mind, because when you come to sell, you may only have a choice of cash buyers or somebody that's going to use one of the lenders out there in the market that
which are more expensive.
Allow. Yeah, so do bear that in mind. But I think those are very good insights. Thank you. Well, as we round this up, our last ever London market update of 2023, I just wondered, Mark, if you've had your crystal ball out at all, and what you foresee happening next year, because I think we're feeling a little bit more optimistic about
100%.
rates coming down in maybe May, and coming down quite quickly. Hopefully landlord confidence will increase. We'll see better products coming out on the market for landlords. We've got obviously the concern about government regulation and legislation and the potential general election. So there's still a lot of uncertainty out there. Do you think the London market will carry on regardless?
So yeah, good question. Is it going to carry on regardless? Yeah, of course it'll carry on regardless. It's going to carry on forever. And I never think London will ever lose its appeal, both for people wanting to live here and therefore people needing homes. So it's going to be there, and it's always going to be there. Whether other places come and go and regional places expand, Manchester, Birmingham, Leeds, they expand, but we're still the capital. And so therefore I still think London has the way to, and will always lead the way. But in terms of crystal ball, what do I predict? I predict that, yes, I hope you're right, May. I don't think May interest rates will come off, but I'm just saying that as trying to be devil's advocate. I'd love to think interest rates will come off next May. I don't think they will. I think they will leave rates flat for at least, I think it'll be 6 to 9 months. So we may see June, but I think that's very unlikely. We might see lenders pricing in a little bit lower rates because they foresee it coming. But if they think it's going to happen 6 to 9 months, then they'll hold the rates longer. I hope by the summer we've seen some decent reductions, and I think by the end of the year, then I think we'll see rates starting early 4s and late 3s for homeowners, non-investors, unfortunately. But I think you'll see early 4s for investors on buy-to-let. I don't think we're going to see 2%. I don't think we're going to see 1.5%. And if you're on that, honestly, my only advice is, and I've done the same thing, I've got three loans that come up, 1 next year and 2 the following year. The only thing I've done is I've worked out what my interest rate's going to be at 4.5%. And I'm putting that money into an account every month. And because I've got one loan that shocked me and went from 1.8% and it went up to 4.6%, and it was 3%, and it was pretty shocking. But my rent covers it. It's not the end of the world. It was just a big jump. So what I decided to do was, I applied that to all of my flats. I worked out what it would be, and all I'm doing is putting some money into a savings account. And then next year I'm going to wait until they come up, and then I'll use that as a lump sum to reduce the value on that property. Or I might decide to buy something else because I think it's coming. So that's my advice on that. That's on rates. In terms of sales prices, I think we're going to see slight growth this year in the London market. Super prime has come off. It's been very, very, very challenging right at the top end. Prime market's been okay, but I think we're going to see 2 to 3% over the next year. Remember, we've got an election coming. No one knows quite what's going to happen. Well, I think my prediction is we'll have a Labour government, but hopefully it'll be a Tony Blair style Labour government, which won't be looking to tax us to the hilt and won't drive us into inflationary times. I think rents will continue to rise, but I think it'll be at a 5 to 7% increase by the end of the year. 6% is my average that I think we'll see by the end of the year. And if inflation is off down to 4.6 and it will drop further, there's lots of pressure on prices. People haven't been spending the same amount at Christmas. I think we'll see inflation come off a little bit further. Hopefully we'll get down to, I just can't see us getting to 2%, but hopefully we'll be down at 3.5% with inflation, which means your income, the rent you're getting, if you get a 6% increase, it's inflation beating, which, let's be honest, as landlords, we've had years of no growth. So I think that's only fair and reasonable. I know it's unfair for tenants, but it is a market and we're all investors and we have to make money. And that's my prediction. I don't see anything awful coming. Renters reform bill is going to come. Hopefully, maybe. Nobody
Well, it's in the doldrums now, isn't it? So we're 100%.
I thought it was going to come, but let's see. Again, if you want my tuppence on that, I've been to an awful lot of stuff. I've been to the House of Parliament as well on a committee that I was on, and actually, I understand where it's come from. The whole renters reform bill, allowing tenants to stay and not kicking them out for unreasonable means. I get that when it's people's homes, and that's primarily outside London, because in London people are transient anyway. So people will go eventually because they go back to wherever they are or they move the country. But the only thing against it I have is that the court system is totally underfunded and under-resourced and under-effective in evicting tenants. And so that is the only thing I think is it takes ages, and as a landlord you get hit. So be careful. If you're taking a tenant on a high rent, just make sure you reference them, and if you can, take out rental insurance just to cover yourself, because everybody gets hit. We got hit as a business. I had a tenant, I got eviction in February this year, and I still don't have possession because the court was meant to do it in October and it got pushed out, and I still don't have a court date for a bailiff. And this is in London and it's awful. So just be careful, and it'll be a good market, but you just have to have your wits around you and be careful.
Well, I think this is one of the benefits of working with a reputable agent like Benham & Reeves, because you know the market inside out. You do very robust tenant referencing, and you've got a special offer for Property Tribes members. The first 3 months, I think, the special offer. So we do invite you to click the link in the video or below the thread and get in touch with Marc. And Marc, we very much appreciate you participating in these calls and sharing your knowledge. And I think the fundamentals for London, I don't think they've changed since I started investing in 2004. And that is buy the right property in the right location at the right price, find the right quality of tenant, and have a long-term view, and
forget about it.
And if you think, if you stick to those fundamentals, I think you'll always be okay in London. I still believe in it. I still invest in London. And just to let you know, Marc, I've started to use your letting service recently, and I've been absolutely thrilled with the quality of the service that I've received from your team. Good. So I'm now going to become a Benham & Reeves landlord customer, and I'll also be using you for a London sale in the spring next year. So all the best to you for the holiday season, and hopefully we can catch up early in the new year, because you and I are cooking up a little plan to do a mini series on the London property market.
100%, love to do it.
We will look forward to welcoming you back in 2024. But until then, Marc, thank you very much, and happy Christmas to everybody at Benham & Reeves from all of us at Property Tribes.
Thank you. Same to you. Thank you.